Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Starting all over again, the sanctity of marriage. Parashat Beresheet, we start reading from Genesis 1:1 to 6:8. As is traditional, last week we read a little bit of Beresheet right after we finished with the book of Devarim. And this is something that we love about Judaism. A new opportunity to start all over again and be faithful to our beliefs. God creates the world in 6 days. On the first day, he makes darkness and light. On the second day, he forms the heavens, dividing the upper waters from the lower waters. On the third day, he sets the boundaries of land and sea and calls forth trees and greenery from the earth. On the fourth day, he fixes the position of the sun, moons, and stars as timekeepers and illuminators of the earth. Fish, birds, and reptiles are created on the fifth day. Land animals, and then the human being on the sixth. God ceases from work on the seventh day and sanctifies it as a day of rest. God forms the human body from the dust of the earth and blows into his nostrils as a living soul. Originally, man is a single person, but deciding that it's no good that men to be alone, God takes a side from the man, forces them into a woman, and marries them to each other. Adam and Eve are placed in the Garden of Eden and commanded not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The serpent persuades Eve to violate the command, and she shares the forbidden fruit with her husband. Because of their sin, it is decreed that man will experience death, returning to the soil from which he was formed, and that all gain will come only through struggle and hardship. Man is banished from the garden. Eve gives birth to 2 sons, Cain and Abel. Cain quarrels with Abel and murders him and becomes a ruthless wanderer. A third son, Seth, is born to Adam. Seth's 8th-generation descendant, Noah, is the only righteous man in a corrupt world. Parashat Beresheet tells us of the beginning of all things, including marriage, the union between a man and a woman. Pay attention. The sanctity of marriage. Anyway, I couldn't start my sermon without giving you a couple of jokes. Last night, I was just laughing. And let me tell you, I was missing my husband so much. I remember when Rabbi was, preparing a sermon, and he always would love to put a joke there or throw jokes. You know my husband would always like to say a joke or joke about anything. One time I remember he woke me up. Oh my gosh, Erika. I said, Benzi, I'm sleeping. And he was just laughing. And last night as I was going through jokes, I just, it reminds me of him. And I couldn't start my sermon without a few jokes. Anyway, this is about marriage. It says, I always wanted to marry Mrs. Wright, but I didn't know her first name was Always. He loved that joke. Top 3 situations that require witnesses: crimes, accidents, marriages. I don't need to say anymore. Says, my wife says I never listen on something like that. Says, man is incomplete until he's married. Then he's really finished. Anyway, now as we start my sermon, the sanctity of marriage. Adam, the first man, was not only created in God's image, he was also surrounded by a perfect creation and the companionship of God, with a wonderful work given to him by God himself. And still, it was not enough. Adam was not complete without the perfect companionship, someone else of his kind. Even the companionship of God himself couldn't meet these needs. This is why only upon seeing Chava, the name of Eve in Hebrew, Adam says, "At last, this is bone from my bones and flesh from my flesh." Genesis 2:23. "For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one." Echad. Genesis 2:24. In the Parashat, the New Covenant, Messiah Yeshua himself cited to define marriage in Matthew 19:4-5. "Haven't you read?" he answered. "He who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." Nowadays, we can read many interpretations about creation, including marriage, keeping it or breaking it, and we break the sanctity of marriage at any given time. And many times we do find a way to get out of it, excusing ourselves, and with a valid reason, even biblical reasons. Jewish law allows a woman to divorce only if her husband grants her a get. A get is a Jewish bill of divorce. Even if the husband has abused her, committed adultery, or simply disappeared, she must receive his permission to break free and start a new life or have children with another man. Those who are denied a get are called agunot, chain woman. These rigid centuries old laws are still observed in the present day in Israel. Malachi 2:16 says, "For I hate divorce," says Adonai, the God of Israel, "and the one who covers his garments with injustice," says Adonai Sebaot. "So protect your spirit. Do not act treacherously. Do not betray." Hebrews 13:4 says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and the marriage bed kept undefiled. For God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterers." Sorry. Personal story. Let me drink a little bit of water. Last year, my husband and I, and Daniel, of course, we celebrated our 19-year wedding anniversary at the UN Plaza Grill. And we were looking forward to celebrate this year as well. But not always, anyway, our 19-year anniversary not always, usually falls, birthday and anniversaries falls on the same day in the civil and Gregorian and Jewish calendars, coincide every 19 years. The number 19, which is the combining of the number 10 and 9, usually denotes God's perfect order concerning his judgment in the Bible. This year, after a long time, 7+ months in the hospital, my husband of 20 years passed away the day of our 20th year wedding anniversary. The Hebrew day was the 19th of Av, God's perfect order concerning his judgment in the Bible. And it was our 20th year anniversary, which means it's one number more than 19, it's twice 10. It can convey a meaning of complete or perfect waiting period. Last year, I remember, we were so excited about celebrating our anniversary. And at one point, my husband said to me, "You know, Erika, it's too late. Let's do it next year." And I said, "No, we have to do it today. It's our 19-year anniversary, falls on the same day, the Hebrew and the Gregorian calendar. We must go." We had the most amazing time. And little did we know that a year later, it was going to be our last anniversary together on this earth. Why I'm bringing this to your attention, why I'm mentioning it on my sermon? Because most of us married people, or a lot of people marry out there, has forgotten the vow of marriage. And until death do us part. So why I'm mentioning this, and the Bible teaches in Romans 7:2-3, for the married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives. But if the husband dies, she is released from the law concerning the husband. So then, if she is joined to another man while her husband is living, she will be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law. So she's not an adulteress, though she is joined to another man. This is why in Judaism, you see people that loses a husband, loses a wife in a year because it's a mitzvah. It's a covenant to be married. You know, many people, they're married right away. So many, they're married too soon. But anyway, what does this mean? I want to share with you the sanctity of marriage and how beautiful it is to have a husband, as a woman, of course. My husband wanted to live so much. He wanted to be with his family. He wanted to be with us. He wanted to be with his shul. He wanted to do so much still. He wanted to share so many things. Baruch Hashem, I do have recordings of him. And God gave us that opportunity. But in middle, of all this chaos, busy days, restless nights, you are my witness, how much we went through. We found an opportunity to fall in love all over again. It was just amazing time. Don't take me wrong. Was terrible to lose my husband. But now thinking day by day, I thank God because I was so fortunate. We were so blessed to have each other, to be with each other. When you care for someone and you pour out your time and dedication, that flame keeps burning. Even in the middle of this terrible season, we found the strength, courage to be there for one another. And we realized that we had the perfect life. Everybody will say nobody's perfect, nobody has the perfect marriage. Let me tell you something. As imperfect as we both are, and we're as a married couple, we had the perfect life. We had each other. We loved each other. We were together a lot of the time. Even during this season that everybody was complaining, what's happening? Everybody's in lockdown. Everybody was complaining about their spouses or being with the children or being in the house. We loved it. We just loved it. It was a time for us to be just integrated as a family. We enjoy being with one another. We enjoy checking what we're doing for dinner. Or just, talking about a sermon or talking about a joke or singing. We love to sing. We used to sing together and make up words. And so this is something beautiful. This is a wake-up call for everybody out there. Married couples, soon to be married, couples that are thinking and separating, or people that is just thinking about getting a divorce or taking a break. Please, do not wait until something tragic happens in your life to appreciate the person that is next to you. Because you may not have the opportunity to cherish one another. It could happen suddenly and you, in a second, lose someone that you love. Do not hold grudges or pick on one another. Do not take for granted that person that is next to you. The same person that you promised to love until death do us part. There is a movie called The Story of Us. My husband and I watched a long time ago. Like I said, nobody has the perfect marriage. So this is the movie is about that a couple that after 15 years of marriage, Katie, Michelle Pfeiffer, and her husband, Ben, Bruce Willis, have grown apart. While they keep up the facade of having a happy marriage, mostly to not worry the children, they aren't happy together and argue frequently. While the kids are away at camp, Ben cries out when they drop the kids off. Katie and Ben decides to separate to try to reassess their relationship, to see if they should stay together or split for good. A bit before Ben and Katie go to pick up their kids from camp, they agree on a plan to tell the kids, starting with a nice dinner. They're going to tell the kids that they're going to separate. On the way, she has a flood of events coming to her head, both good and bad. This time, Katie cries when seeing the kids. Ben names a restaurant that they had agreed on, but she counter-proposes another. Then she runs on, and essentially, they have to take the bad with the good, and they choose to stay together. Over the years in ministry and counseling people, singles, married, we have seen couples taking the sanctity of marriage lightly. And I'm talking about couples that have been married for few years to many years, believers, non-believers. What's happening? Or what happened? Did you forget the reason why you got together to begin with? You just woke up one day and thought of your husband like a dress. I don't like how it fits me anymore. Or your husband gets back from work way after business hours, late in the evening, finding any excuse. Let me go to the gym, let me go find my friend, let me go to see my family, whatever it is. Because he's hoping when he gets home, you, the kids, everybody's sleeping so nobody bothers him. No, it doesn't happen overnight. But it happens when we take one another for granted. When we find other priorities. This priority can be your job, your friends, your business, your children. We all need a balance. Your priority, let me rephrase this. Your priority are not your kids. If you are married, your priority is that person that is next to you. The person that you sleep with. The person that you wake up with every morning. He or she is your priority. You both are an essential part of your home. If you and your husband are one in one accord, I'm not telling you that everything is going to be perfect. But trust me, things will be easier. Your children will see that. Your children will sense that. And guess what? You will give your children a stability. You will give the children that sense of, you know what? I have a father and a mother that are embracing me. That are holding me straight. That they're setting up boundaries for me. Children need boundaries. Yes, they do. When you see a father and a mother fighting, or the child siding with one father or the mother, it's chaos. I remember one time we were here in the living room, and Daniel was sitting here, Rabbi was sitting in his sofa, and I said something to Daniel. I don't remember. And Daniel didn't reply nicely. He was a little, nasty with me, and he raised his voice. I remember that minute my husband said to him, "Hey, who are you talking to like that?" And he's like, "What?" They said, "Who are you talking to like that? She might be your mother. She's your mother. That's true. But let me tell you something, little kid. That's my wife you're talking to. And to my wife, you don't talk like that." Daniel, until this day, he remembers those words. He remembers the respect. And of course, I felt like, oh, wow, And this is what I'm telling you. I'm going to tell you the story about a wife. The wife says, My husband takes me for granted. I used to be his whole world. He made me feel so loved, so needed. I was at the center of his life. But nowadays I feel more like a roommate with responsibility in common, our children. Other than that, we are like two strangers living under the same roof, sharing a bed. The spark is gone. So I want to remind you, Adam stood in the middle of the garden, surrounded by God's creation at his feet. He was the masters of them all. The animals, green pastures, waters, heaven, land, everything. He had everything, yet he was missing something essential to his happiness and completion. He was lonely. With the creation of all other species, both male and female, to start to exist, men needed to feel the sense of intense loneliness to appreciate how essential is his other half into his life. How important is his other half? And God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I shall make for him a compatible helper. Genesis 2:18. So let me tell you what the husband says. The husband says, I was so attracted to my wife. And you know what attracted me of her? When we first met, her amazing qualities and her personality. Always smiling. But now she makes me feel that I'm nothing. She doesn't build me up. She makes me feel like I'm not successful. She doesn't stop criticizing me. There is no stop with the complaining and the nagging. Before, she used to build me up, laugh at everything, enjoy with me, be part with me. So I'm going to tell you now about Eve. Eve awoke from a deep sleep to look into his eyes, Adam. Immediately, she sensed that they were deeply attached to one another. In fact, somehow she knew that they were actual parts of one another. She would be an essential part of his life, its very foundation. In describing Adam, the first human, the Torah says, male and female, he created them. Genesis 1:27. We learn from here that originally man was created as one complete entity. Man was alone. They were separated them and brought them back together as a couple, man and woman. Marriage is the unification of two halves into a complete entity, described as one flesh. That's the sanctity of marriage. Adam said, this one at last is bone of my bones and flesh from my flesh. This one is called woman. For from man was taken this one. Genesis 2:23. As part of man's own flesh, she's closest to him, a natural part of his being. She was built from him, but it was she who needed to build him up. Without her, he was no whole. A woman is actual part of Adam. Is one of the best equipped to inspire him, a confidence in achieving his mission. Only together could they fulfill their dreams and hopes, their joint mission and purpose. Anyway, I asked a few people around, what do they think is the key for a successful marriage? Briefly, I asked an older woman, widows, married couples, divorced couples, separated, newlyweds. And the answers are very way different, but at the same time, it makes sense. Some people say love, communication, understanding, things in common, always someone has to give in, balance, a space between couples, to learn to enjoy friends and do things separate, especially when you work together. Trust and same goals. Two healthy minds. If one is already twisted, it doesn't matter how hard you try to reason. The twister will be twisted. The key is love, from which respect is derived. Always have to put passion into it and give your partner the professional development that they require. There must be trust. Of course, keep falling again in love over and over again, and good intimacy. Other person said, accept the person as is, adapting to one another. Of course, everybody has good and bad qualities. The key here is that the good qualities outweighs the bad. And this is the answer that I like the most. Why you think you have a successful marriage? He says, time. Dedicate time to your spouse. Even if you don't like to do things that your spouse likes to do, go along with the program. You are making the effort. He or she will make the effort. A lot of time, your time is dedicated to family, friends, events, and you both do not have the time that perhaps you used to have. And this is fundamental. You don't have the time that you had when you were dating. Beyond respect and fidelity, these are the key points. This is a new couple, newlyweds. So I asked again, what do you think marriage are falling apart? A lot of people say cheating and not forgiving, lack of money, routine. Says love grows and goes away depending on what happens in the relationship. Other people said financial separations, selfishness, temptations, such as drugs, alcohol, infidelity. Other person says when you try to change someone, you met a person as is. Perhaps they can improve with time, adapt to each other, and with tact, things will get better. But do not become a dictator in your own home. This is a man. And then the last that I also like very much says, you trust so much that the person must love you, that you forget that exists and you take that person for granted, that he or she is by your side and is always going to be by your side. You have to work on that, and that person will love you every day. Every day. The formula for a successful marriage, a perfect relationship between a man and a woman, is hidden between the lines of the very first pages of Genesis. In the very first moments of creation, God reminds men and women of the essential tools each carries. To men, you had the entire creation at your fingertips, but you were lonely. Remind her how much she means to you. Make her the center of your world and a treasure. You need to take care of your wife. Make her an essential part of your life. You beautiful bride. To a woman, you are his greatest helper, without whom he cannot succeed. Your smile, your approval, your words of praise and encouragement are essential to him. He needs you to build him up. Brief story about Rabbi and I. I remember he needed to write a paper. And he just didn't have the words. Sometimes when you have to write, you don't have the words in your head. And he said to me, I'm not going to write it. Forget it. I can't. And I remember this was years ago. And I remember saying, just get in front of the computer. You can do it. You have the knowledge. You have a bright mind. Sit and start writing. He says, but the words are not coming, Erika. Just sit and start writing. As you write, ideas will come to your head and you will start typing. And he did. And it's one of his greatest papers. Something about Paul. And if I find it, I will send it to you. But it's encouragement. You know, if I would have said to him, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, forget it. We as women, we need to build up our husbands. And men, we are your treasures. Protect us. Show us that you care for us. Ephesians 5:25-33 says, husband, love your wives just as Messiah also loved his community and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, having cleansed her by immersion in the word. Messiah did this so that he might present to himself his glorious community, not having a stain or wrinkle or any such thing, but in order that she might be holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes, just as Messiah also does his community, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So Ephesians explores the mystery introduced in Genesis 2:24. This is why a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh, echad. As it applies to Messiah and his people, and then opens up the mystery to show how husband and wife are to live together in Messiah. For those who are married, and to many of you perhaps, this applies a lot, applies a little bit. Like I said, nobody has the perfect marriage. But in your imperfection, find perfection. But you might know someone that is going through a rocky situation, that are not like this, are more like this, or more like this, or more like this. Remind them of the sanctity of marriage and how beautiful it is to have a spouse. It is beautiful to be with somebody. It is beautiful to wake up in the morning and have that person bring you a cup of coffee. It is beautiful to have somebody that you ask, what are we having for dinner? You know? And how beautiful it is just to be with your spouse. It's not easy. Some days are better than others. But it takes work. It takes dedication. Invest in your marriage. Look at your marriage as a company. You don't want your company to go bankrupt, but instead you want it to grow, to be successful. But in order to have a successful company, you need to invest in it. You need to put work in it. You need to put dedication. Your marriage is worth it. And it's so important and a key point in nowadays society that is looking the good as evil and the evil as good. When the sanctity of marriage is just turned apart. You want a divorce? Go for it. You want to separate? Go for it. No. Before we make any quick decision that you may regret later on or for the rest of your life, don't forget the sanctity of marriage. Shabbat Shalom.